You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look me better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Manga Muse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Deku Enters the Witcher? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Pidzejowaty on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Next day. Vesemir woke up from his slumber again in the nurse's office. Again. No pain, nothing. Seconds ago he was about to beat the answers out of that man, who knew something about his mother. He sat down on the bed just to see a set of clothes with a piece of paper on top of it. On that paper were some signs, maybe words, but the young witcher had no idea what they meant. He, of course, got dressed. Clothes were of very good quality, interesting material, thin and light. He took the card, folded it, and put it in his pocket. He came to the door and tried to push it, of course realization came seconds later. Vesemir shook his head a little and slid the door to the side and went out to the corridor. Night yesterday after the talk in Nizu's office. Yui wasn't in a good mood. Words of Vesemir affected her even when she told that she could take it deep inside. She knew that it would just hurt her more. She couldn't sleep, so when Auntie Nemuri finally came back, she asked her about everything. Auntie, did he really do it? He killed so many people. Yui, sit down. There will be some shocking news about Vesemir. Midnight said gently, sitting on the girl's bed. Yui just sat next to her, and without any words, she looked with teary eyes at her aunt's gentle, smiling face. Yui, it might be hard for you to believe, but Vesemir is not from here, not from Japan, not from Earth. Huh? The girl was shocked. Did her aunt decide to make a joke? Out of tragedy? It's not funny. I know, baby, I know, but it's all truth. The detective was able to confirm his words with his quirk. His mother had that quirk that lets her travel to the different worlds, and we believe that somehow, Vesemir activated that quirk, or his mother had sent him here without him knowing. Oh God, if you could only see Aizawa's face when he found out. Midnight became a little giggly at the end. Found out? What? Oh, that's not for me to say, but trust me, Vesemir will be staying here for good. He is also from a world with a lower technology level. Nizu guessed that it's a medieval level of technology. People with quirks in medieval times? Yes, Yui, and that's why he had to fight and kill. Medieval times were really dark. He most likely had no chance to arrest anybody simply because that's how his world worked. You did not arrest the villains, but you had to kill them. I knew that he is not a bad person, he didn't know better, right, Auntie? Yui said with a hint of hope. Of course he is not a bad boy, but he had to do bad things because he was forced to. In his world, there are no prisons like Tartarus. Think about our world during medieval times. There were dungeons, of course, but most criminals were executed. But now it's not a time for that. You need to go to sleep, and I have a good reason for it. What? We are taking Vesemir shopping tomorrow. Remember that outfit with dark blue jeans? He's going to look great in it. We got funds secured to buy him whatever he needs to start his life here, so I need you to help us. Your quirk will be great for grand shopping. Of course you will have my permission as a pro heroine to use your quirk. We are going shopping at a shopping mall for heroes and their families only, so don't worry. Auntie, but if he doesn't have any clothes, what will he wear? I have a set of clothes right here for him. It's a UA uniform. It will do for a start. Before I go to sleep, can I bring it to him? Nemuri smiled from ear to ear. Does my favorite niece have a crush already? Oh, young love. Auntie Yui said, trying to remain composed, but even her well-trained, emotionless voice cracked a little, her cheeks turned slightly red. Of course, Yui, you can come with me, but Vesemir is already sleeping. How do you know? Well, about that. What did you do, Auntie? Back to Vesemir. Just as he stepped on the corridor, the voice from nowhere said. Ah, young Vesemir. Please stay where you are. Aizawa will be there for you in a minute. It's time for the most important meal of the day. Breakfast. Just as the voice of Nizu said breakfast, Vesemir felt his stomach growling due to lack of food. It was nothing new for him. In the field, he did not have regular meals. He came closer to the window and looked outside. Some people, most dressed like him. Boys and girls. Girls did not wear any pants, but short skirts, which would be outlawed in any normal school in his world. Yes, world, that is a proper way to say that he remembered everything, and suddenly he woke up in the bed. He lost consciousness just like the first time with that Ronin, or what was his name, the man who stabbed him. Vesemir was a second from cutting him down and... Hey kid, said Aizawa, measuring his son with his eyes. Vesemir cast away his memories. He let that man sneak up to him, and the young witcher knew that he was coming. Geralt would not be pleased. Good morning, sir. Let me take you to the cafeteria. It's still holidays, and most kids have a recess in studies, but there will be some students who had problems with their studies or came for extra training. Be cool with them. Understood? What does that mean, sir? Be cool. I meant to mind your manners. I believe that my manners are at an appropriate level, said Vesemir with his chin up, looking at the man's eyes without fear, with a hint of challenge. Let's just go. You can eat anything you want there. For the record. This is your uniform. You are now a student of UA, for now at least, since UA is a high school, not a junior high that is for kids in your age group. Vesemir just followed Aizawa to the cafeteria, and what Vesemir saw shocked him. Inside, a ton of food, high-quality food. Around 100 people inside, eating or waiting for their turn to take a plate and put whatever food they wish for. Just the smell of it worked wonders for Vesemir's hunger. Daddy Aizawa, sang Nejire when she entered a moment after them. Eraserhead just gave her his famous death stare. Not now. Midnight. Oh, have you taken young Vesemir to fill his stomach? What a good person you are. Just like a daddy, Aizawa. That's your new nickname. Kid. Line up and take something to eat. I need to have a talk with Midnight Sensei. Good morning to you, MDM, Vesemir greeted her, and he walked away to the line of students. Just at the smell of the food, his stomach growled. So he stood behind a girl with long blue hair in the lane. She turned her head and spoke. Oh. Hello there. Are you a new student? Aren't you a bit too young for UA? I'm Nejire Hado. What is your name? What is your quirk? Nejire started asking one question after another. Vesemir gazed into her blue eyes, trying not to blush. He was still a boy after all. Hello. Should I answer your questions in the order you asked? Oh, silly me. Sorry. Your choice. You can answer or not, but hey. I like meeting new people. I can see that. Let's make a deal. I'm new in Japan, so help me out here with picking the right food, and we can sit together and talk. Deal? Oh. A foreigner. We have a deal. Happy, Nejire said with delight. Okay. So you're going to need this, and rice, and this, don't forget about that. She started pointing at various meals. Oh. And that is our cafeteria chief. Cook hero lunch rush. Vesemir looked at the strange man, who hid his face with his big white hat in some kind of metal tube. Good morning, sir. Thank you for your work. He bowed a little in a sign of respect. Lunch rush responded only with his thumbs up. And so they sat down at an empty table. So my name is Vesemir. I'm 14, so you tell me if I'm too young for UA. And my quirk is hard to explain. Uhu. Mysterious quirk. No surname. Are you in hiding? Do you need help? Are some bad guys looking for you? Is UA protecting you? Nejire started asking questions with the speed of bullets. My quirk works with my stamina. I can use it to whom it's actually hard to explain to someone who does not know anything about magic. Magic! Shouted Nejire. Some students started looking at them. That's what my grandfather calls it. He has the same powers like create fire, a magic trap that slows you down, another one pushes you back or can even disarm you if you have a weapon in your hand, another one creates that bubble of protection that will. He started explaining, trying to hide the truth, and the best way to do it is to tell a truth, well, half-truth. Oh. Is your grandfather a hero? In what country? Where are you from exactly? Let's say that those are secrets for now. Ah, you are no fun, said blue-haired girl, puffing up her cheeks. But you told me something about yourself, so it's my turn. I have a quirk called wave motion. Thanks to it, I can even fly. It uses my energy, though, and it's very tiring. You said flying? Yep. Like a bird. Well, almost. But I'm getting better and better at it. One of the students of the hero course came to them. A boy who looked at Vesemir with spite. What is a general course student doing with one of us? Excuse me, sir. I have a conversation with a fellow student, as you can tell. Humph. Aren't you a little too young for UA? Said the black-haired boy. Ain't you a little too stupid for UA? Vesemir changed his voice type to be similar to a boy's, who dared to interrupt his meal and conversation. Watch your tone, kiddo, there are no teachers around to save you. The boy tried to be scary but Vesemir just smirked. Miss Nejire. Do you want to see some magic? And before she could say anything. Axii. Maybe you should go and rest somewhere, you look tired, said Vesemir, with a proper sign with his fingers. Dazed student was only able to say, yeah, I'm kinda tired, and he walked away. Nejire frowned. You shouldn't use your quirk, it's illegal. Will you tell on me? Or should I just punch him in the face? Thanks to that, there was no fight. Maybe you are right, but it's still illegal. There you are. Said Midnight. Finish your breakfast, and we are going shopping. Shopping? Well, we need to get you some stuff like clothes and other necessities. Right, Vesemir-kun? Midnight smiled, or should I say grinned. So you are in hiding? Said Nejire. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you, Miss Nejire, but it looks like I have a schedule. Good day to you. Vesemir made a Nilfgaardian bow and left with Midnight, taking his tray of empty dishes with him. Vesemir entered a carriage, that had no horses, just like his mother was telling him about. Yui and Midnight were with him. To the Hero Trading Center, please, said Midnight to the cab driver. Vesemir looked at her with a question on his face. It's a shopping mall for heroes and their families. It's easier to make groceries, when you are not attacked by your fans for autographs, pictures, that kind of stuff. Pictures, my lady? Ah, yeah. Pictures are like paintings, but we can make them instantly. Just like that. She took a photo of Vesemir and turned her phone to him. He saw himself exactly like he looks like. Yui looked at him with her emotionless glare, but her aunt knew that she was curious. Where you came from, there are no cameras, cars and other stuff like this, a true medieval world, defined medieval, hinted Vesemir. Swords, bows, castles, horses, ships with sails and other. Yui started counting on her fingers. Pretty much. What did you do in your world, Vesemir? Any school? Asked Midnight. I had various teachers. If you ask about academic studies, then I studied math, geography, philosophy, history mostly before I had to move on. Later, I was traveling with my grandfather. He taught me how to be a witcher, how to fight alchemy, herbalism, how to speak with various types of people. When we reached my grandmother Triss in Cover, she taught me about magic, but mostly a theory. Is she a witcher like you? No. She is a mage wizard. Not sure what name is proper, maybe a wizard, due her to take an education in the magical matter. So a witch. Like a magical old grandma, who lives in the forest in a small hut. Don't call her witch. She is a royal advisor to the king of Cover and Povis. Her residence is hardly a small hut in a forest. She doesn't even like me calling her grandmother. She prefers Aunt Triss due to her knowledge of magic. She looks very young for her age. Oh. And how old is her? Asked interested Nemuri. Didn't ask, I didn't have a death wish. Nemuri laughed, of course. I would be offended too by that question. But I know that she is younger than Geralt, my grandfather, for about a decade, and he is around 80-90 years old. Wait, so your grandmother is at best 70 years old and looks young? How young? Around 30. 35. Honestly, I never asked her how she did it. I'm kind of afraid to ask. I rather stand in first row in battle. Did you fought in battles? Asked Yui. It depends. If by battle you mean every small skirmish with bandits, then some, but if you think like actual battles, I fought in two. Wait, kid, you were on the front line? Asked shocked Nemuri. Well, it was a couple of days after I got a title of a knight, the Battle of Red Wine they called it. It was in the Duchy of Toussaint. For the first time in ages, the Imperial rebels decided to attack that land. I was there at the tournament. In 5 days, I lost 3 horses. I finished the battle on foot. Yui covered her mouth with her hands. Midnight was shocked beyond understanding. She dared to ask. But how old were you? I was 13. And you were fighting for 5 days straight? Of course not. I fought on the 1st, 2nd and 5th days. The company I was in had some time off the field to rest, repair gear, help wounded and other things to do before. Vesemir looked at them, a little disoriented. Don't you have wars in here? Yui looked at her aunt. Her emotionless mask crumbled into dust. Why, yes we do, but the one you are speaking of are like in our medieval times. And what can you tell me about those medieval times? Yui finally decided to say that it was also called the Dark Age. I think I understand why without even knowing your world's history. Vesemir nodded slowly a couple of times. A moment later they arrived at the Hero Trading Center. Midnight gave the driver a strange card made of unknown material. The driver put it inside some kind of box with glowing numbers or letters. Vesemir wasn't sure. After they left the carriage, the young boy looked at the card and just had to ask. Excuse me, but what is it? This is a credit card. It's a thing that stores your money. Or should I say that the money is in the bank, and thanks to that, I can pay everywhere, where they accept this kind of transaction. You do understand what the bank is, right? Vesemir straightened himself, his head high with a hint of pride. MDM, I fully understand what the bank is. We have them in our world. I think that I also understand how it works, similar to our bill of exchange. You can take a document from the bank you stored your money in and withdraw the money to the next one, or buy something for it. If there is a trader, that would take the risk. There were many people who tried to forge that type of document. You are educated. Yes, it might sound similar, but that card is not for single use. It also requires a code for making a payment. Code of payment. Vesemir's eyes widened. It's so simple, yet cunning. It can help the banks defend themselves from the thieves. Why nobody thought about that in my world? I'll tell you what. Let's forget for a moment about that dark world of yours and let's go shopping. Happy Midnight squealed with delight, dragging behind her Yui and Vesemir alike. The building was huge. There were a lot of people, or people-like creatures. There were those big clear windows with goods behind it. Vesemir thought that it might look like a market in the city, but under the roof. But no, that was something else. He let Midnight drag him, where she wanted. As he was just looking around with his heightened senses, he smelled food incense. Here. Jeans first. We need at least 5 pairs for that boy. shouted Nemuri to the worker of the shop, where she dragged both teenagers in. And so it began. Jeans, shirts, t-shirts, boots, jackets and everything that Nemuri saw, she made him try on and buy them. He begged her to stop, as he was not used to being treated like that, but she paid him no mind. Yui. I think you already know why I made you come here. Use that quirk of yours on everything we buy today. Yes, Auntie. Yui took the first bag and shrunk it to the size of a small apple. Vesemir was again in shock. Is this your power? I mean quirk. Not quirk but quirk, and yes. It's so useful in so many ways. Does the weight also change? Yui gave him a small bag. It was almost weightless and there were a couple sets of clothes inside. It's not an illusion, it's real. Amazing, Miss Kodai. He made a small bow full of respect for her capabilities. That was all that Yui said in return. A small smile was visible only for her aunt, as she turned around to take another bag in hope of hiding her slight blush. Nemuri made Vesemir try everything she saw, and by everything she meant everything. Around 4 hours later and around 40 shrunk bags, all in one normal-sized one, they finally went to the restaurant on the dining floor. And now you will, for the first time, eat some Italian food, said happy Nemuri. They all entered a restaurant, with music coming from the walls. Vesemir was worried that he would remain in a constant state of small shocks as long as he is in this world. At least the tables were normal. As they were about to sit down, Vesemir tried to assist Midnight, but she just sat down. Yui did the same. What's wrong? Asked Yui. I was in my world, it's good manners to assist a lady in sitting. Oh my. Such a gentleman. Smiled Midnight. There is no need for that here, but next time feel free to assist me if you want. Of course, MDM. Vesemir sat down next to Yui. Oh ho. Why did you sit down next to Yui and not me? It's a matter of respect. I would offend your husband by sitting next to you without a proper invitation, as a place next to the lady is for honorable quests. Miss Kodai is in my age gap, so I believe that it was a proper place to sit. Yui smiled a little, looking at her aunt's face. She was not married, and that direct hit from Vesemir managed to swing her mood for a second. It was not his fault, of course. He didn't know. Did I upset you, MDM? Oh. No, you did not. I'm just not married yet. Vesemir went pale. He offended her. Now he needs to make it right. Forgive me, MDM, but if it's true and it's hard to believe that you have not met a dozen proper suitors ready to marry you just because of your beauty, then I would be honored to sit by your side today. Oh ho. Midnight smiled and looked at slightly annoyed Yui. By looking slightly annoyed she meant very, as Yui did her best to hide her emotions. Please do. And so Vesemir switched seats. After some time and helping Vesemir to pick a dish, they waited for food. What shall we drink to that type of meal? Drink? Asked Midnight. I wonder if wine is the proper type of drink. Or maybe an apple cider. Both girls looked at him shocked. Even Yui, who asked a couple seconds later. You drink alcohol? Why, of course. What else should I drink? Absolutely not. You are way too young to drink. Who even allowed you to do so? Said Midnight a little too loudly. It's something normal in my world. It's better to drink a light alcohol that does not have any filth in it than drink water from, let's say, a river. You don't know if an animal died in the water 100 meters up the stream. It's dangerous to drink from an unknown source, but alcohol is always safe. Ah, now I understand. Any juice or even water could go bad pretty quickly in your world. Alcohol was a long-term drink, said Nemuri. But here in our world, children cannot drink alcohol till they reach 18 years old, Vesemir. That might be a problem then. Why? Because my elixirs are based on strong alcohol. How strong? Is vodka strong in your world? Yes, it is. And you are banned from even touching it, young man. After dinner, the small group of 3 walked to the parking lot to take a taxi back to UA. At the doors, however, Vesemir bumped into a man with black hair and in casual clothes. "My apologies, sir," said Vesemir. "It's you," said the man. Vesemir looked at the man into his eyes. It was the same man who attacked him with his sword made of hair. "Indeed, it's me. What are you doing here?" said Mr. Brave angrily. "That's none of your matter, sir," said Vesemir without respect. Now. We were here to do some shopping. It's good to see you too, Mr. Brave. Midnight, we both know that he is a criminal. If you have something to say about me, then address your words to me, sir. Watch it, kid. I shall not take orders from a man who enjoys dressing up as a clown. Eyes widened. Vesemir, said Midnight with a shocked expression. That's no way of speaking to someone. Watch your tongue, kid. You don't have your swords with you, said the man, with anger. I do not require any of them to defeat you again. Vesemir tried to say it coldly, but he was all heated up, ready to fight. A little bit of magic will do just fine. Vesemir, stop. Midnight grabbed the boy by his shoulder. We are leaving, and we will have a conversation about your attitude, young man. Vesemir heard her, but he paid no mind to it. If you feel offended, sir, then you can always ask for me in a UA. We can have a proper duel, to satisfy your honor, grunted the young witcher. Vesemir. Midnight pulled him on his hand. And you, Brave, could think a little before you threaten a child again. He is not a child, Midnight. He is a cold-blooded killer. Vesemir looked at their conversation that very fast became a shouting match between the 2 pro-heroes. Finally, Yui decided to speak to the man. He is not. What did you say, child? He is not cold-blooded. He has a conscience. I saw it in his eyes. Yui said it all with her emotionless voice, that managed to ease up a tension, just enough to pause their conversation. Sir. If you demand satisfaction, then you know where to find me, and one more thing, if you ever shout again at MDM Midnight in my presence, I will be the one seeking you. This time Vesemir's words were cold, slow and loud enough for other pro-heroes with their families to hear. Good day to you, sir. Vesemir turned his back at the man, and looked at Mad Midnight. MDM, please forgive me for this situation. May we return to UA? The journey back to UA was quiet. Nemuri wondered what she could really do about Vesemir's behavior. She really had no power over him, unless Nizu extended her options regarding the young boy. After all, he was still a UA ward until Aizawa took him as his son, which he was after all. MDM. Vesemir's voice rang in her head. MDM. Once again, louder this time. Nemuri opened her eyes and looked at the troubled boy. Excuse me, Vesemir. Despite his nervousness, Vesemir looked her in the eyes, which was also not easy due to he was a growing teenager. He managed to control himself and said, I am deeply sorry, ma'am, for the lack of restraint in speaking to Sir Brave. I understand that at the time I was under your care and I insulted your authority. The young witcher bowed his head down, looking at the bottom of the carriage, a vehicle called taxi. I want to assure you that I intend to take full responsibility for my lack of tact. Midnight was shocked. No normal teenager would do something like that, but no normal teenager had to fight in battle, killing people who wanted to kill him. She was overcome with sadness at the thought of how Vesemir had lost his innocence, childhood forced to fight to kill. The teenager sitting before her is the result of many neglects, abuse and even torture, because no one will ever convince her that leaving scars on a child's body will help in raising him. The boy lacks the warmth of a family. Aizawa will probably treat him like a son, but in addition to a father, every child needs a mother. Nemuri decided that she would fill this gap with herself, if necessary. Vesemir, I understand that due to your upbringing you may see things differently, but you can't just threaten heroes like that. You shouldn't threaten anyone. My lady. I didn't threaten anyone. Really? And a challenge to a duel? As you put it yourself, a challenge is not a threat. If Sir Brave wants satisfaction, then I will gladly give it to him on the beaten earth and with a sword in my hand. Yui listened and looked at both of them. She was still shocked about Vesemir's adventures despite the fact that he had killed criminals and had killed in the past. She couldn't blame him. It was all the fault of the world he came from and the conditions in which he had to grow up quickly. With a neutral expression on her face, she finally decided to speak up. Please don't fight him. Vesemir looked at her. There was no challenge, insult or rejection in his eyes. There was curiosity there. Miss Yui. I would like to know the reason you know why I should not accept a potential challenge to a duel. Yui glared at him. What could she possibly tell him? That she was worried about him? That she never wanted to see his BLD again? Vesemir sensed her hesitation and decided to react. Forgive me, Miss Yui, but if Sir Brave were to decide to challenge me to a fair duel, which I myself proposed, I would be insulting my honor, your lady aunt, and Sir Brave, since he accepted the challenge. Yui's heart began to beat slightly faster. Vesemir has an interesting worldview. Honor. Why would you insult my aunt's honor? Because, I warned Sir Brave about his manner of addressing Lady Midnight, which is not becoming of a gentleman. However, he has the right to seek satisfaction if he felt offended by my words. Yui and Midnight exchanged glances. They both understood that they wouldn't convince Vesemir. He lacked knowledge about how people of this world lived. Midnight hoped that Mr. Brave would prove to be a true hero and wouldn't demand a duel. She was also sure that even if Brave turned out to be an idiot and challenged a 14-year-old boy to a fight, Nizu wouldn't allow it. Although knowing her employer, she could use this opportunity to test Vesemir's skills. After arriving at UA, Midnight received a message on her phone to go with Vesemir to the principal's office as soon as Vesemir was ready. The young Witcher was given a studio apartment in the teacher's building, right next to Aizawa's apartment. Yui used her quirk once again, this time to enlarge the bags to their original size. Midnight explained to the boy how the fridge, toilet, shower, intercom and other items in the studio apartment worked. What interested Vesemir the most was the radio. A wonderful device that allowed you to receive music and news broadcasts, or by inserting a small flat music disc previously purchased in the store. A real cultural revolution. Unfortunately, there was no time to explore the possibilities of the radio because Mr. Nizu required Vesemir's presence at the meeting. Yui had to go back to her parents, so Midnight took Vesemir to the principal's office, where they of course found Mr. Nizu and Mr. Aizawa inside. Ah! Vesemir, it's good to see you again. I hope your shopping went well. Of course, sir. Thank you for providing me with the things I needed. I promised to repay the debt I owed you. Vesemir bowed slightly, feeling obliged to show respect. Nizu smiled to himself. Ah, no problem Vesemir, no problem. Do you perhaps have any idea why I invited you to talk? Vesemir had his suspicions, but perhaps he shouldn't show his cards too soon. Enough stupidity for today. You may have many reasons to talk to me. Instead of throwing them out blindly, I'd rather not waste your important time. The boy can think he's promising. Nizu thought. Mr. Brave challenges you to a duel. He claims he can easily defeat you in a sword fight and that he intends to teach you humility. Midnight sighed heavily, but before she could say anything, Vesemir forestalled her. Sir Nizu. Please inform Sir Brave that I accept the challenge and let him set a date of your choice. If possible, please have the duel take place in your domain. Aizawa glared at his son. He had previously talked to the headmaster about how this would be a good opportunity to test the young boy's skills. He himself did not want to put Vesemir in danger, but Nizu was right. We can test Vesemir's abilities in a controlled environment, and the boy himself would probably give his all to defeat Mr. Brave. Of course. However, there is one thing we need to discuss before I agree to this duel. Both of you will be able to use your abilities at will. Mr. Brave will use his quirk, while you will be able to use your magic. Of course, everything within the limits of common sense. The duel will take place tomorrow morning, while you, Vesemir, will receive a sword made by Power Loader. He is our teacher from the support course development studio. Nizu saw Vesemir weighing his words for a moment. It did not take long before Nizu heard the answer he had been expecting. I agree, as long as I can test the weapon first. Nizu looked at Aizawa. He nodded at him, and he bent down to the piece hidden behind the desk. He threw it towards Vesemir. The young witcher grabbed the weapon, then slowly pulled the blade out of the sheath. He weighed the blade in his hand. Nizu began to wonder if Vesemir would notice the slight differences in the sword. He had Power Loader make a replica of the boy's sword, with some minor changes that only a swordmaster could find. Another test. One of many that Nizu had thought of for Vesemir. Can we go outside? I don't want to accidentally damage the principal's office. Of course. Follow me, Vesemir. Nizu led the entire group outside, away from the curious glances of the staff and other students staying at UA. Despite the holidays, the number of students was quite large. UA offers free training rooms for its students all year round. Vesemir once again pulled the blade from its sheath. He handed the sheath to Aizawa and walked away to dance. Do you need any goals, Vesemir? Midnight asked. The young witcher shook his head, denying it. He closed his eyes and imagined his opponents. A cut, a pirouette and a jump. The blade began to sing, cutting the air. Aizawa was surprised. He hadn't expected such a display of skills from his son. Nizu, smiling, assessed the boy's skills. Midnight stood like a pillar of salt, remembering Vesemir's story about the battle. In Vesemir's head. Vesemir smashed the delivered blow into his chest. He made a half-turn and decapitated his opponent. Another soldier with a halberd tried to cut him off, but Vesemir dodged. He found himself slightly behind his back and slashed him in the back. Another opponent eliminated. Cut, jump, block, cut. The blade sang its song, drinking blood, severing limbs, ending lives. This was no knightly fight, but an ancient art called slaughter. It was hard to tell who was on your side. Fortunately, the enemies were easy to recognize. After all, they were the ones attacking. The slashing of horses, the screams of the wounded, requests directed to various deities. All this was echoing in the boy's head. A boy who had not chosen his fate. A boy who had to fight to survive. The Battle of Toussaint, countless other skirmishes, slaughter, fear, excitement. Cut. Another assassin decapitated. Once again, they had come for him. Vesemir had loved and hated Novigrad, a city where he had met someone who understood him. Someone he could talk to, laugh with, cry with. Now, a tainted body lay in the gutter, and above it a group of drunk Redanian soldiers. Anger, hatred, revenge. 6 Redanians had paid for their crime. Sorrow, guilt. Nizu, Aizawa, and Midnight's POV. The group watched what Vesemir was doing with his sword. His movements indicated a high level of training. Training that must have cost him a lot of sacrifice. Nizu stopped smiling when Vesemir's movements became seemingly random. Aizawa, having experience in hand-to-hand combat, said. He sees them the people he fights with. Nizu just nodded, reading the emotions on the boy's face. Pain, fear, determination. Midnight noticed something towards the very end of the test. An unshed tear. She looked at the rest of the audience and realized that both gentlemen had seen it. They were teachers after all. Vesemir finished his dance. Time to return to reality. He took a few deep breaths. Emotions had to be chased away. He couldn't give in to them. He slowly walked up to Aizawa and took the scabbard from him. Securing the sword in the scabbard, he said. Thank you, Mr. Nizu. In a very short time, Mr. Power Loader managed to create an almost replica of my sword. Almost? Nizu said. It's made of a different metal, although the steel's shade is the same. The weight is shifted a centimeter higher, compared to my blade. It makes a different sound when cutting the air. It's not sharpened. Nizu smiled broadly. Vesemir was a MSTR. This test told him a lot about the boy's skills. He also noticed the emotions that came out during the sword testing. The boy hides his problems, but it didn't surprise him. I'm glad you liked the sword. This is a version intended for training. I kindly ask that you do not use your swords when practicing with others, unless the teacher gives permission. You will find your equipment in your room in the closet. As agreed, your swords are there as well. Now you can go for a well-deserved meal. You can move around UA without any problems, just remember to carry this card. It is a device that marks you as a UA student. If any teacher asks who you are, just show them this card. Nizu handed the boy his student card. Midnight looked at Vesemir gently. Come on Vesemir. I'll take you to the cafeteria. Standing in line for lunch, Vesemir was approached by a girl he already knew. Vse Kuan, said the blue-haired student. Hello Miss Nejire. Ah. Stop with that miss. Call me Nejire senpai. Vesemir just nodded. Wait, do you have a sword? Isn't it forbidden? Is it part of your quirk? Can you fight with it? Who taught you swordsmanship? Nejire, as is her wont, once again bombarded someone with questions. Vesemir thought over his answers, yes, no, partially, yes, grandpa. Wow. Then you must be trusted by your teachers. I wouldn't say so. Mr. Nizu allowed me to keep my belongings. He also gave me this sword. On the other hand, I am forbidden from leaving UA's premises without supervision. Ha! I knew it. You're hiding from someone. Nejire said a bit too loudly. Vesemir ignored her words to go and get the food from Food Rush. Thank you, sir. He bowed slightly, to which the cook responded with a thumbs up. Vesemir went with the tray to sit at the table. Nejire caught up with him a moment later. Oh, you left your favorite senpai alone. Vesemir Kohai, how could you? Now you have to answer all my questions without exception. Nejire puffed out her cheeks in mock anger. You can ask, but I don't promise I'll answer. Yuwak. Meanie. Nejire said, right after swallowing her rice. So who's after you? Bad people. Why? Because they want to put pressure on a certain person, and I'm the target to make it happen. So you didn't do anything bad. Bad and good depend on the point of view. A child may see you as bad because you took the candy, but you knew the candy contained poison. Despite saving his life, the child will still think that you just took the candy from him. Nejire was speechless. For the first time in years she looked the white-haired boy straight in the eyes. He was smart, or rather experienced, with no signs of being a child. Something had to happen and Nejire would find out what was in store for him, and she would do everything she could to help him. She had the feeling that Vesemir was or still was stigmatized because of the quirk he had. The ability to influence others, like he did yesterday in front of her, could be considered a quirk great for criminals. Being herself, she simply decided to ask further. Did you also have problems with people because of your quirk? The question asked in the question did not escape the boy's attention. Despite talking to a appealing girl, he was able to focus on the conversation. Nejire senpai. You said did you too? Nejire looked at the plate of food with a sad face. Yes, my quirk is very powerful. People didn't understand me, which isolated me more and more until I learned to control my quirk better. When I traveled with my grandfather, many people didn't want to take us in because they saw us as mutants. Mutants? But how? You don't have any visible mutations. From where I come from there is a certain group called themselves Witchers. My grandfather is one of them, the same as me. Witchers are professional hunters who hunt monsters. Ordinary people rarely want to have anything to do with us. Of course, it all depends on where we are, but even if someone doesn't openly insult us as changelings, there are still stares. Glances of fear and incomprehension. Vesemir muttered. There was a long pause as they ate their meals without further conversation. Nejire decided to change the subject, though she started thinking monsters. Kohai, what did you mean monsters? From where I come from, there are creatures that humans call monsters. Most are similar to animals, but there are also some that are as intelligent as humans or even surpass them. It all depends on the type. Wait, are you telling me that your grandfather forced you to kill monsters as a child? Nejire practically screamed in shock. No. He didn't force me to do anything. The conditions were what they were. We had to run away. He had taught my mother how to fight before, to defend herself, so he decided to defend me as best he could by learning his craft. You had to run away. How old were you when you had to run away and start fighting? Honestly? I don't remember. I was 6-7. Nejire covered her mouth. A tear rolled down her cheek. Hey! That kid made Nejire-san cry. A student shouted. A group of first years rushed towards Vesemir. He stood up, turning to them. I'm having a very emotional conversation with Nejire-senpai. Yeah. What was it about that you made her cry? A boy from the group said. Vesemir just watched as 5 boys surrounded him. His hand itched to grab his sword. The topic of conversation will remain a secret between me and Nejire-senpai. The main leader of the group, the boy who turned the skin on his arms into scales, looked angrily. You little. No. Wait. Nejire said, holding back tears. It's not his fault that I cried. How do we know that you're not under the influence of his quirk, like Sajuo-san was yesterday? If you want to fight, unfortunately you have to get in line, Vesemir said in a low voice, already thinking how to use this situation. What? I have a duel with Mr. Brave tomorrow morning. Right after it, I will gladly accept your challenge. He looked at the students surrounding him. If you're scared, then bring your friends to help you. 1 or 5, it doesn't make a difference. The entire group of students was shocked. The 5 boys who surrounded him, Nejire, and a dozen or so other students who had come closer to witness what was happening. Someone shouted from the crowd. You're going to fight Mr. Brave? More voices echoed throughout the cafeteria. The white-haired foreigner is going to fight Mr. Brave? Who does he think he is? Bets. I'll take bets. He said tomorrow morning. Maki-san. Write in the group. I already wrote. What a spectacle. The crack of a WHP echoed around. What a crowd. Get back to your classes. Midnight Sensei shouted. The students immediately went to their classes. Some left the cafeteria, some just lined up to eat. Vesemir sat down opposite Nejire. I'm sorry, Nejire-senpai. As an apology, I can tell you a little more information about witchers. Really? Nejire stopped sulking immediately. Her tears were forgotten. I told you that witchers kill monsters, but that's not the whole truth. If possible, we don't. Like I told you, there are different types of monsters. You can talk to the intelligent ones, and even help them. Help? How? Can every monster be helped? Nejire went back to being herself and bombarded Vesemir with more questions as fast as she could speak. It depends on the type of monster. For example, there is the Striga. It is a creature that has been cursed. The Striga only wants to kill everything around it, but there is a possibility of returning the Striga to human form. My grandfather did it twice on the same woman, actually. Nejire's eyes widened. Really? I've never heard of such a thing. Are you sure you're not making fun of poor Nejire-senpai? She asked, pouting. I wouldn't even dare to think about it. Then continue, my kohai. There are other monsters. For example, the vampire. Vampire. Nejire-senpai, please. Yes, a vampire. Despite being classified as monsters, it all depends on the subspecies. There are vampires that are like animals, but there are also intelligent ones. An example of such a vampire is my grandfather's friend, Regis. He is a representative of the high vampires who have free will and look like humans if they want to. No, really, you're making fun of your senpai. I promise not. I'm just telling you what I've heard, seen, or read myself. In the age of quirk, one could say that Uncle Regis is not a vampire, but has a vampire quirk. Uncle Regis? Of course. I met him as a child and since then he doesn't respond to anything I say unless I call him uncle. Vesemir smiled at the mention of his favorite uncle. You said that monsters are cursed. Does that mean that Regis is cursed too? No. Not all monsters are the result of a curse. Regis was born with his quirk, just like you were born with yours. It's just people around him consider people like him monsters, because there are vampires who are just very aggressive animals. I guess that's the simplest way I can explain it to you, without going into details. Ah. So Regis isn't dangerous at all? Oh, he's very dangerous. He has the skills and strength to even kill, but he doesn't. He chose a career as a surgeon. But with such power he could become a hero. Here yes, but not where I come from. People are I see they rejected him for his quirk, not for what he does with it. You could say that. I know he's a vampire. His friends know it too, but no one else knows. If anyone found out they would lose their job and be forced to flee. How terrible. Yes, there was another vampire, Detlef. You could call him a distant cousin of Regis. He had the same quirk as Regis, but he wasn't a good person. Villain? You could say that he had the power to control other vampires, I mean those animal vampires, and one day he unleashed them on the city to slaughter. That's terrible. I know he had his reasons, but my grandfather and uncle stopped him. Unfortunately Uncle Regis had to kill him because Detlef simply wouldn't stop. So that Detlef was a villain and had the same powers as your uncle. Despite that, Regis decided to do good and became a doctor. That means everyone can choose their own path, Nejire began to think. Detlef was also a victim in all of this. He was used by a certain person and in the end he couldn't take it anymore and wanted to take revenge on the innocent. Did that person get punished? No, because her sister, who was in power, simply covered everything up. Nejire felt angry at how everything had turned out. Nejire-senpai. I understand how you feel, but there was nothing that could be done. Besides, it was about 18 years ago. That person was murdered a few years after the vampire attack out of revenge. But that's illegal. It's illegal here. The authorities protected her there because her sister was in power. That doesn't mean that other influential people who lost family members in the attack haven't forgotten. Do you know why I told that story? Nejire looked at him, impatiently. To teach me something. That punishment will befall everyone. No, Nejire-senpai, if the people in power aren't fair then the wronged people will take matters into their own hands, which doesn't have to be legal at all, but neither was. Pardoning a criminal just because he's your family. Asterisk. In the meantime. Nizu's office, asterisk. Nizu was sitting comfortably on the sofa in front of the screen showing what was happening in the cafeteria with Hound Dog. The school psychologist started commenting on the events they were watching as they were happening. Evil and good depend on the point of view. I don't like it. Nizu, the boy has a warped point of view of good and evil. It's not his fault and it's our duty to help him. You already know that he's Aizawa's son. I know, but that's not why I want to help him. DMN it Nizu, he's just a kid. They both continue listening. Mutant. So the boy had it worse than I thought. He had to fight even as a child, Hound Dog said. Easy, Ryo-san. Oh ho. I see a group of students are gathering, Nizu replied with interest. After Midnight intervened. The boy has ball and it shows. No fear. He played them however he wanted. Now everyone will come to tomorrow's duel. Nizu nodded in response. Yeah, but he also wanted to grab his sword instinctively when the other student used his quirk. I'll have to talk to him about it. I don't think there's any need for that. Nothing bad happened and Midnight reacted quickly. They continue listening to the conversation. Striga vampires, Hound Dog began. His world is different than ours, Nizu replied. And his answer, that's how vigilantes are made. Ryo-san. I need to start a session with Vesemir as soon as possible. The boy may be at the end of his rope, Nizu. I know, but hold off on that until the duel. At least did you watch the footage of his training with his new sword? Hound Dog growled quietly. Someone turned the boy into a killing machine. I swear I will hunt down the man who did this. Ryo-san, remember that Vesemir comes from a completely different culture and world. I know Nizu, but he's just a kid. Is Aizawa going to take responsibility? Yes, just please go talk to him about it. Aizawa has no idea how to approach this topic properly. Definitely not. Hey son, I met your mother once and now it turns out you carry my genes. Don't worry, it's confirmed information because we have a special test that can check it. That was his original plan. Nizu sighed slightly. I'll talk him out of that. Where's Aizawa? Hound Dog left the principal's office, looking for his new victim, the patient, that is. Nejire and the rest of the students had to go back to their classes, so Vesemir went to the principal's office to find something to do. Anything that would allow Vesemir to repay his benefactor. Nizu heard a knock on his office. It's open. Vesemir, come in. The principal of the most famous school for heroes said. Vesemir entered the room, closing the door behind him. Good day, Mr. Nizu. How did you know it was me who knocked? With cameras. Cameras, sir. Nizu smiled gently, turning on one of the large screens to show Vesemir what was happening on training ground number 3. Several students were currently training to save people from a burning building. Robots played the role of people. Vesemir immediately thought of the possibilities of his grandmother Triss, who was able to communicate with another sorcerer or sorceress from a distance while maintaining an image. Would it surprise you if I told you that I've seen something like this before? Oh. Nizu asked. Wizards in my world are able to communicate remotely, along with the transmission of images. I can assure you, Vesemir, that this is not the work of magic, but of technology, but I'm sure that's not what you wanted to talk about. How can I help you? I would like to repay you for your care, and take on some useful activity, Mr. Nizu. The smile on Nizu's face did not disappear. Oh Vesemir. You don't have to do anything to repay us. It is our duty as an educational institution to help children. I have already made preparations to start your education. You speak our language like a native Japanese, but you need to learn the alphabet to start reading and writing. You have no classes or duties until the duel begins. It's only 2 o'clock. Tell me, Vesemir, do you have any hobbies that don't require your combat skills? Vesemir pondered. He sat down on the couch, just as Nizu nodded for permission. What could he possibly do? Now that he was out of danger, and Mr. Nizu had clearly noted his non-combat skills. Flashback. Hey vs. What's up? No, a portrait. I look like a drowner. And this is how you treat your best friend? 6-year-old Vesemir threw a tantrum. You'll see. One day I'll be the best painter in Nilfgaard. Oh ho. And then you'll paint a portrait of me? A girl his age asked, whose face he couldn't remember. Ha. Then you'll beg to pose as a vase stand. End of flashback. Vesemir lowered his head and Nizu didn't press him. He could see the boy sorting something in his mind. When he was about to ask the boy if something was wrong, however, he said a bit uncertainly. Could you find a canvas on which I could paint? Nizu's expression softened. But of course, Vesemir. As I understand it, in your world such a hobby was expensive. I must surprise you that here it is much cheaper. Even small children use paints in large quantities. So you don't have to be ashamed. Would you like to paint something specific? Vesemir nodded, slightly surprised. Yes, a certain person. Of course, Vesemir, of course. Nizu made sure that the items required for painting were delivered to Vesemir's room as soon as possible. A large wooden easel, a painting palette, a set of brushes, pencils, canvases of various sizes, a pad of clean white paper. All of this cost a fortune in Vesemir's world, if it existed at all. Nizu looked at the surprised Vesemir. He knew perfectly well what the young boy was thinking. Calm down, Vesemir. Here, the items are very cheap, as I already told you. Oh. I almost forgot the most important thing. Nizu pulled out a small device the size of a small phone and placed it next to the radio. If you take something with writing on it, the device will read it and say it out loud. For example, oh. He took the record and put it to the device. A calm, monotonous voice said. The Four Seasons by Vivaldi. I understand that Midnight showed you how to use this device. Choose the CD that interests you and enjoy the music. Just remember to get some rest before tomorrow. I'll ask Midnight to come over to your place when it's time for dinner. If you need anything, you can find me in the office, or you can knock on Aizawa's door next door. The walls are well insulated, so you don't have to worry too much about the volume. Thank you, Mr. Nizu. Vesemir bowed to his benefactor. Nizu smiled once more and left the room, closing the door behind him. Now all he had to do observe the boy and his actions. Nizu hadn't told Vesemir about the cameras in his room. Unfortunately, that was necessary at the moment. Vesemir examined his tools of the trade, as his teacher called the art supplies. Like everything he had seen in this world so far, excellent quality. He prepared his work tools and there was only one thing left: to use a device called a radio. Vesemir decided to choose a record at random, and without using the device to read the name, he simply inserted the record into the device. He sat down on a chair, in front of the canvas, picked up a brush to apply the first layer of paint and an unfamiliar track played in the room from multiple speakers. It started with a low, dark sound with a male choir in the background, which put Vesemir in a slight state of anxiety. Something like a male choir was supposed to build tension for the upcoming battle. Vesemir's hand stopped before the paint touched the canvas. He closed his eyes to see the picture that was being painted before his eyes. The infantry lined up. The commanders of the selected sections were making final adjustments. The archers took their positions. The intensity increased. Vesemir was once again in the saddle on the fields of Toussaint. The enemy infantry rushed to meet us. The prince looked at me, thinking I didn't see his uncertainty. He was in a hurry, but I just nodded. There was no turning back now. Vesemir's hand moved by itself. Choosing colors, applying layers, painting creatures. The expressive, sharp sound of the orchestra, giving rhythm to the ongoing battle in Vesemir's head. Shots flew in both directions. The infantry gathered in the center and on the left flank, only to give way under the enemy's pressure after a moment. We were supposed to just sit in the perimeter as a terror, but fate had other plans. A trumpet sounded, followed by commands. We must strike the enemy from the side, or our infantry will fall to pieces. The infantry do everything they can to stop the enemy's advance. The clatter of hooves reaches their ears. The moment of fear passes when the awareness that it was their cavalry that came to their aid filled their hearts with courage. The fast pace given by the commander excited our mounts, thirsty for BLD. These were not just any mares, but full-blooded warhorses straight from the cold north. The sound of a war horn. The signal to charge. The uncertainty disappeared somewhere, replaced by a feeling of euphoria built by the sound of 1,000 hooves. The enemy finally realized that a detachment of armored cavalry was approaching, but it was too late. Vesemir felt his mount drive its hooves into the ground of some unfortunate man. The cavalry delved into the enemy, a dozen or so rows deep, reaching the shield wall of the allied infantry. The young witcher lost his horse, which was pierced in the chest with a spear. The young man jumped out of the way just in time, slashing the spearman in the face. Not looking at his fall, he turned to deal another blow. It was a massacre. Prince Merdan stood knee-deep in water, driving away enemy infantrymen. Vesemir rushed to his aid, along with the rest of his bodyguard. Arden had not been the same since his brother's death. He slashed the enemy left and right, disregarding his own safety. Right behind him, David hit the warrior who had come up behind Merdan with his crossbow. Vesemir slashed the wounded man with his sword. The exhausted prince had no chance in a lonely fight, but fortunately his companions were there. Vesemir burned the face of another warrior using witcher magic. No one counted how long this skirmish lasted. Minutes? Hours? The day was still the same, and a group of 4 young men, yes, already men, who had proven themselves on the battlefield. No one would ever call them boys again. From now on, they were men, but the price of such elevation was high. Common soldiers looked at them like characters from legends. Armored, they still had helmets on their heads with closed visors. No one saw their tears, sweat, fear, fatigue, but also determination. They had come to Toussaint to participate in a knightly tournament, and they ended up defending this land from the first armed invasion in centuries. The first day of the battle was not over yet. In reality, it was just one skirmish between several units. Now it was time to leave the battlefield to make way for the rested units to take their place. Vesemir and Merdan exchanged glances. They both knew Geralt would rip their legs out of their asses for participating in the battle. Vesemir could always defend himself by saying he had no choice but to go after the prince as protection, but he wouldn't do that. They both fought, they both survived, they both would suffer the consequences. A few hours had passed since Vesemir had been left alone. Nizu, once he had finished with his duties, switched the screen to the view from Vesemir's room directly at the boy painting. His face fell when he saw the white-haired boy's gaze. He immediately called Midnight, who was nearby. Midnight-san. Please go to Vesemir's and take him to dinner. Of course, is something wrong, Nizu? I don't know yet, but I don't like the look on his face. I don't know what he's painting, but Vesemir moved his easel so that the camera can't see it from this angle. Just don't scare him. Nemuri ran towards the boy's room. Right in front of the door, she stopped. She allowed herself to catch her breath and knocked. Vesemir? Can I come in? Silence answered her. She grabbed the doorknob and gently opened the door. Vesemir, it's me. Midnight Sensei. I've come to take you out for dinner. Nemuri looked at the boy, who was staring at the painting, which was out of her sight. She walked around him to put her hand on Vesemir's shoulder. Vesemir, is everything okay? She asked and looked at the painting. Description of the painting. 4 knights stand knee-deep in the morning water, their backs to the viewer, fighting a fierce battle with the advancing enemy infantry. Among them, one stands out not only with his movement, but also with his gesture. It's Vesemir, but in this scene he's dressed like a knight, in full, heavy plate armor, well fitted to his figure. Despite his knightly gear, he has retained his characteristic white mane. His hair spills out from under his helmet. At that moment, he raises his steel-clad hand and releases fire from it, shooting out at the nearest opponent. Flames explode into the face of the enemy, who screams and falls, hugging himself helplessly as the rest press on. The fire illuminates the darkness of the morning mist with a golden and orange glow, adding drama to the whole scene. The remaining 3 knights fight hand-to-hand, weapons clash with weapons, shields tremble from blows. A broken crossbow sticks out of the water. The water around is churning, stained with blood, and the sun is just emerging from behind the horizon, illuminating their armor and creating a luminous counterpoint to the Witcher's fiery spell. End of description. Midnight understood immediately this was the battle Vesemir was talking about. She hugged him gently from behind, trying to make some kind of contact with him. Vesemir, please, it's over. The boy shivered. He calmed down suddenly, understanding where he was. He breathed heavily. Midnight Sensei. Yes, Vesemir, it's me. How are you feeling? Thank you, MDM, I'm fine. Midnight let go of him slowly to crouch in front of him, looking him straight in the eyes, trying to detect if the boy was lying. Can you tell me why you painted this? Vesemir looked at the painting once more. He knew exactly why, because for the first time in his life he could allow himself to relive his memories without fear for his own life, but he wasn't going to share this information with anyone. He couldn't come across as weak. Just a moment of inattention. There may be no assassins here who want to kill him, but if he somehow got into this world, sooner or later someone else might find a way to teleport. The young Witcher mastered his emotions and donned an invisible, cold mask that didn't express any emotions. I think that under the influence of inspiration I decided to paint something from my memories. Who are the others in the painting? I assume you're the one with the white hair. Yes, that's me. The others are David, Merdan and Arden. Merdan is Prince Kovar and Povis, and we were his entourage. Something strange happened to Vesemir in the area of his heart. A sense of guilt but also a form of fulfillment. For the first time he could paint his experiences, give form to his thoughts, pay tribute to the fallen, and Vesemir understood that he still had many paintings to paint, but he was afraid that his life would not be enough for it. 10 minutes later, after taking Vesemir out for dinner, Nizu, Hound Dog and Aizawa were looking at the boy's painting. Good God, Hound Dog mumbled. Nizu nodded sadly. Aizawa, on the other hand, felt angry. Anger at Ciri for allowing such neglect, anger at all those who had hurt his son, but also at himself that he had not been able to stop Ciri, that he had not been able to gain her trust enough for her to at least tell him about Vesemir and not leave him in his care. And right next to the anger there was also a sense of guilt that if he had been more decisive, if he had been stronger, he felt ashamed that he had even dared to think of calling himself Vesemir's father. He was his father, but not Dad. Through his clenched jaw he could only say, "Forgive me, son." Vesemir woke up with the first rays of sunlight falling on his face. He looked at the device called an alarm clock. 7 o'clock in the morning. The duel would take place in 2 hours. Yesterday, Midnight had explained to him the principle of the alarm clock, the watch, and the minutes and hours that serve as a measure of time in this world. He got out of bed and began preparations. The leather jacket armor had been repaired by power loader. The gold bars had been replaced with steel ones, increasing protection against injuries. There was no trace of the knife piercing. The technology of this world never ceased to amaze the young Witcher. Now, in order. Vesemir put on his old clothes. A white t-shirt was the only new element of his outfit. Good, strong leather trousers and black boots covering his calves completed his appearance. He secured the remaining elixirs in the designated place on his chest. Daggers in several places, under the armpits, at the side, attached to the hip. However, the place for the crossbow remained empty. In place of the steel sword, he attached his new sword, given to him by Nizu. In the other place, he attached his old, silver blade. He didn't need it for the duel, but habit had one. Besides, he got used to the weight of the second sword on his back. That's how he trained, that's how he fought. He had eaten a very modest dinner the previous evening, but he had no intention of eating breakfast just before the fight. Alternatively, a cut in the stomach could prove fatal then, and Vesemir was unknown to the advanced medical technology of this world, additionally supported by healing quirks. After a moment's thought, he decided to equip himself with 2 Saman bombs, which are not lethal in themselves, but can blind the opponent. He didn't need more. Vesemir didn't mean to kill Mr. Brave. He remembered the last fight with the so-called hero. Last time, he had defeated him in 6 moves. Last time, Mr. Brave managed to hit him in the ribs only because Vesemir was holding back. There would be no leniency now. Vesemir sat down on the floor, crossed his legs and closed his eyes. The room was almost completely silent, only the sound of birds could be heard outside the window. He breathed slowly. Deeply. Inhale, new world. Thousands of foreign smells, synthetic materials, dust, ozone, green trees from the campus, distant unknown smells of food from the kitchen. Exhale, Pont Vanis smoke of the fireplace, the smell of BLD, metal, oils and damp rock. The memory of the previous fight with Mr. Brave moved through his consciousness like a shadow. A blow to the ribs. A mistake. Not technical, emotional. Vesemir made a mistake. He didn't want to damage Mr. Brave, whom he mistook for a guard. Vesemir gave him a head start. Why? Because that girl was watching. Asterisk, please don't do it. He is a hero, asterisk. The girl's voice rang in his head. Kodai Yui. That's why he hesitated. That's why he got hit in the ribs. It wasn't her fault. It was his decision to take her words into consideration. Inhale, the girl's gaze, the smell of new paints, the appealing flowers floating on the lake that you can see from the window. Exhale, the screams of the wounded, blood pouring into his eyes, the stench of burnt skin, bloody water up to his knees. Did Vesemir want revenge? No. Mr. Brave didn't do anything like the people the young witcher took revenge on. It wasn't about revenge. It was about showing the limit. No one would ever hit him again. No one would ever touch his body again. The last piece of clothing. The wolf amulet. The symbol of his craft. Despite the fact that he hadn't undergone witcher mutations, he was able to fight like a witcher. The son of the child of surprise, Ciri. Magic had been present in his body since before he was born. Triss couldn't explain why he was immune to the negative effects of magic. Nizu watched the young boy through the cameras. He hadn't moved since putting on the amulet. He had been sitting cross-legged. An hour had passed. The wolf symbol, what could it mean? Depending on the culture, it could mean something good or bad. To the Romans, it was a symbol of the founding of Rome. In Norse myths, the wolf was seen almost like Satan in Christianity. In Japanese beliefs, wolves are credited with seeing things hidden, or seeing things as they really are. Nizu knew that the wolf form was well regarded in Japanese culture. This would definitely help the boy if used properly. However, it all depended on the boy and his duel with Mr. Brave. Nizu knew that Hound Dog had decided to pay the boy a visit an hour before the duel. Hound Dog knocked on the door. Vesemir opened his eyes. He returned smoothly from his meditative trance. He stood up, walked to the door and opened it without a word. Hound Dog stood in the doorway. A tall, almost 2-meter tall man. Vesemir. I hope I'm not interrupting. Can I have a moment? He asked politely. Of course, Mr. Hound Dog. You're welcome. Hound Dog entered and walked around the room. He didn't sniff or poke around with his eyes, but observed. Finally, he looked at the boy with interest in his eyes. I'd like to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. Hound Dog said. Vesemir sat down and nodded. Why are you doing this, Vesemir? What are you trying to prove by showing off your strength? I want Mr. Brave to know that he's crossed a line. What line? The line of treating Mrs. Midnight and Miss Yui. The line of attacking someone for a stupid reason. Ah. So this is about revenge? No. If it was about revenge, I wouldn't challenge him to a duel. I'll teach him a lesson in humility. It's something that could save his life. Can you elaborate on that, Vesemir? Hound Dog asked with curiosity. If he had come across another Witcher Letho, for example, he would have died. Just like that. There would have been no exchange of blows. A break of the blade, a pirouette, and a cut at chest height, low from below diagonally upwards. Mr. Brave would have died. Hound Dog was silent for a moment. Usually he had a ready answer or comment. This time he simply looked into Vesemir's eyes, as if trying to analyze the words he had just spoken. You want to show him the reality of your world. When Mr. Brave decided to attack me, the reason for his attack didn't interest me. He attacked me and I responded. Proportionally. If he had done the same a year ago, he would have died. Hound Dog took a few steps towards the window. For a moment he looked out at the peaceful campus landscape. Why? Because I had a lot of anger. I still do, but now the anger is just a tool. Hound Dog didn't turn around yet. There was tension in his posture, but not anxiety. More like deep reflection. Finally he spoke, slowly, carefully choosing his words. 14 years, he said quietly, almost to himself. 14 years and you're already using anger as a weapon. Better than most adults I know. Hound Dog finally turned around and looked Vesemir straight in the eye. This time there was no judgment in that look, only concern. You know what really worries me, Vesemir? That you speak of death with such precision as others speak of tactics in a sports game. Technically. Factually. And that's the problem. Vesemir didn't react immediately. He looked at Hound Dog without blinking, but there was neither challenge nor aggression in it. Rather, vigilance. Like someone who was used to being judged. Life has turned out this way, that I am who I am. I won't change that. Hound Dog sat down in a chair. He looked at Vesemir. Boy. You don't have to do this. You don't have to fight him. We can still call it off. It's too late to call off the fight. Such a decision will hurt everyone around. How? Mr. Brave's ego will grow even bigger. My word will lose credibility, and what is a knight's word if that knight is not able to keep it? Hound Dog accepted these words with a straight face. The boy is wronged to such a degree that he does not understand that he has been wronged. Someone will pay for this. He was silent for a moment, not looking away from the boy. It was one of those silences in which an adult feels terror. Finally, he sighed quietly, as if with a heartache. Vesemir, can you explain to me how you see good and evil? Vesemir thought for a moment. He looked at his image again. After a moment, he said. Evil is evil. Lesser, greater, middling makes no difference. The degree is arbitrary. The definition's blurred. If I'm to choose between one evil and another, I'd rather not choose at all. Hound Dog fell silent. Vesemir's words hung in the air like a sword blade, simple, cold, unoiled by moral compromise. They didn't fit a 14-year-old. They didn't fit a child. Can I ask you a question? Yes, Vesemir, please ask. Have you ever killed anyone? Hound Dog hesitated. It was a simple question only on the surface. The answer required courage, not the physical kind he knew perfectly well, but a more fragile, personal kind. He looked at Vesemir with a new kind of seriousness, as if trying to convey more than just words. No, he finally answered. I've never killed anyone. That's obvious. The young witcher replied. Hound Dog didn't react immediately. That's obvious. Those two words echoed in his mind like a muffled gong. They weren't said with contempt. They weren't an ironic judgment either. They were a statement of fact. Cold, but not cold by nature, cold like the look of a warrior who sees that someone hasn't had to reach for a sword yet. And what do you think, Vesemir? He finally asked quietly, thoughtfully. What is it that you see in me that makes you think I've never killed? You are part of the system of heroes. From the behavior of the heroes I know, I can conclude that your work ends with catching a criminal. You don't care what happens to that criminal. You don't care that that criminal can escape and return to crime. Then every theft, every murder, and every RPE is your fault, but you don't see that. You don't see that killing that criminal will close this vicious circle. You live in a madness unknown to me, in which you are the good guys, even though you don't really care about others. I'm not saying that killing every criminal is necessary, but one day you will wake up with the conviction that the man you arrested escaped from his cell and committed terror, killing or injuring many innocent people. This is the dilemma of good or evil. The world is not black and white, it is painted in various shades of gray. Vesemir walked over to the painting and turned it so that Hound Dog could see it. Please describe what you see. Hound Dog walked closer to the painting. He stopped in front of it, not touching the frame, not leaning in too much, he simply looked. For a long moment he didn't say anything. It was obvious that he was analyzing every detail. Finally he spoke, slowly, with respect in his voice, as if he were describing not so much a work of art as a memory. For nights, he began quietly. Standing together, as if they had always been a team. Or as if no one else had survived this battle. He moved his gaze to Vesemir's silhouette, so clearly recognizable, despite his knightly armor. The one standing here, that's you. The movement of your hand, you're releasing fire. But this isn't an attack of fury. This is a deliberate gesture. It doesn't look like an outburst of emotion, this is an action of choice. Cold. Determined. He paused. He took a quiet breath. Your posture is irked. Even when you fight. As if you can't afford a shadow of a doubt. As if you have to be a rock for those three beside you. He swept his gaze over the other knights. They fight too. But differently. With effort, with desperation. One of them is holding his arm, the other is half-turned, as if he had just managed to parry a blow. And you are their center. The point around which it all revolves. He fell silent for a moment, then added quietly. Water BLD in it. Waves. This image does not show triumph. It shows necessity. Survival. The price. He looked at the crossbow, partially submerged in the water. A broken crossbow. A symbol of what no longer works. Or what had to be abandoned. A ranged weapon, but here, useless. Only direct combat remains. Finally, he looked at Vesemir. This painting is not just about fighting. It is about responsibility. About burden. About the loneliness of a leader. About a boy who cannot afford to be a boy. Because if he hesitates, everyone will die. Hound Dog finally fell silent, waiting for the boy's answer. Vesemir replied. From a strategic point of view, it was just the first small skirmish. Just 2,000 men. For the fighters, it was their moment. Life or death. For the commander, it was simply reconnaissance of the enemy. What is their morale? Will they break under the pressure of the infantry or only after the cavalry attack? The point of view depends on the person and many factors that affect that person. If I had painted this skirmish from a great distance, I assure you that you would have different feelings. For the people who were there and won, it will be a memory for the rest of their lives, of which they will be proud. For historians in 100 years, it will be just a mention of a 5-day battle. Vesemir glanced at the clock. My duel begins in 20 minutes. I kindly ask you to escort me to the place where I will cross swords with Mr. Brave. Hound Dog's heart ached with pain. Step. 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 Vesemir walked down the long, empty corridor right behind Hound Dog. He walked without fear. Years of training and actual fights had allowed him to control his emotions, or at least not show them in public. This would be just another fight, or even more training than a fight, remembering the previous fight with Mr. Brave. Geralt would probably say that Vesemir had done something stupid. He would be right. The young Witcher had acted in a fit of emotion, challenging the hero to a duel, but once given, you can't take your word back. What kind of person would he be if he agreed to Hound Dog's proposal to call off the duel? Maybe in this world no one would think of him as a forswearer, but Vesemir would have trouble looking at himself in the mirror later. Step. 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 Hound Dog glanced over his shoulder at Vesemir, who was walking calmly, with a poker face. He knew these kinds of faces from the therapy rooms. Masks built over the years. Armor that doesn't crack right away, but bears traces of past blows. Listen, boy. It's not too late. You don't have to fight anymore. Vesemir didn't answer. He just nodded slightly. Not out of spite. Not out of pride. With conviction in his eyes. Hound Dog sighed and turned back. This kid wasn't like any of the others he'd had to work with. He'd never had a protege who'd killed and repeatedly. Did all the kids in his world have it like that? Or was he an exception? They walked out of the hallway and out, walking through the PE grounds toward Gym Gamma. A few people were waiting by the entrance. Aizawa, Midnight, Yui. Yui looked at Vesemir, who was walking right behind Hound Dog. He was dressed exactly the same as the day she met him the day he killed. She shook her head slightly. The most important thing now was to support him. She wasn't sure who would win. Midnight looked at Vesemir as soon as he stepped out of the building. She had heard the boy's words about the heroes. Aizawa too. She didn't know how yet, but she was sure that he would change the boy's mind. Aizawa looked at his son. Now that he had time to look at him, the boy really reminded Ciri, and it wasn't just the hair. The boy's eyes were the same as his mother's. If Ciri had a quirk that allowed her to teleport to other dimensions and her dimension was downright barbaric, then why didn't she come here or at least leave Vesemir here with him? He would have been fine. After all, the boy wouldn't be here alone. He has a grandfather and grandmother here who don't know about his existence yet. Here's the question, how was he supposed to explain to his parents that he was Vesemir's father? How to talk about it with his own son? Did he have a father there, on the other side? Vesemir walked up to the entrance of Gym Gamma. He bowed slightly towards Midnight. Miss Midnight. Miss Kodai. Mr. Aizawa. He marked each of them separately, making slight bows. From this place he could hear people in the building. From the sounds he could tell that quite a few people had gathered. Has Mr. Brave already deigned to arrive for the duel? The young witcher asked, avoiding looking at Midnight because of her provocative attire. Aizawa nodded. He's waiting inside. Remember that you can use all your skills. This is not just a fencing duel. This is a duel of quirks. In that case, let's go inside. It's rude to make someone wait for an appointment. Vesemir said, then walked past the group and opened the door. He was greeted by the audience's cheers. About 200 people gathered on the balcony built around it. Most of them were students. A few people dressed strangely, they had to be heroes. Vesemir Kohai. Good luck. A girl with blue hair known to Vesemir shouted. The boy just nodded to her. He went to the very center of the hall, where Mr. Brave was already waiting. Aizawa followed right behind him, as he was supposed to be the referee of the duel. Mr. Brave was waiting for him with a grimace and a gaze that sparkled with self-confidence. He grabbed his black hair and formed a sword out of it. Vesemir didn't even stop. He stood about 10 steps in front of Mr. Brave and waited for Aizawa to stand in the middle. This is supposed to be a fair fight. No killing blows, Aizawa continued, but Mr. Brave interrupted him. No. Let the boy show what he's made of. He won't be able to hurt me anyway. Everyone heard him. The students began to talk quietly. A few pro-heroes did nothing. They just watched the young witcher. Everyone will now see who you really are, Mr. Brave hissed, but Vesemir remained calm. He slowly raised his hand, and grabbed the steel sword on his back. The sound of the blade being pulled out echoed through the hall. Aizawa stepped back to a safe position. Mr. Brave bent his knees slightly, taking an offensive position. Vesemir held his sword in one hand, the blade pointing away from Mr. Brave. Begin, Aizawa said. Mr. Brave was the first to move. He quickly moved, aiming for Vesemir's ribs. The Witcher turned sideways, allowing the hair sword to pass by him, and at that moment he casually delivered a slash towards the pro-hero. He blocked the blow with a wrist guard he had created from his hair. Taking advantage of the open path of attack, he redirected his sword to slash the boy on the shoulder. But the blade only cut through air. Vesemir disappeared from his field of vision. No, he didn't disappear. He simply went lower, balancing low to the ground, and made a smooth slash with his steel sword towards Mr. Brave's knees. He dodged at the last moment, but not without loss. The lower part of his outfit was cut open, and a thin line of BLD appeared on his thigh. Stepping back, Mr. Brave threw several hair needles towards Vesemir. The boy stepped out of the path of the first and second projectiles, and deflected the third projectile with his sword in one fluid movement, immediately taking advantage of the opportunity to cast a spell. ARD. The Witcher's hand shot out towards the pro-hero. Mr. Brave had already felt the impact of the Witcher's magic once before. He formed a shield from his hair, which allowed him to protect himself from the invisible blow, but despite this he lost his balance and fell backwards to the ground. Vesemir could have jumped at that moment and ended the duel, but he stepped back. He took a few steps back, allowing his rival to stand up. The audience reacted with sounds of surprise. Some were already talking to others about Vesemir's quirk. Controlling gravity. Maybe air. Others talked about how the pro-hero had been knocked down with one blow by a boy not yet of UA recruitment age. Mr. Brave stood up quickly and began attacking the boy from a distance, throwing needles at him. He easily dodged the projectiles. What's more, he approached his opponent, moving smoothly. When he pretended to make a move, Mr. Brave covered himself with his shield. In response, Vesemir once again extended his hand, with a ready sign. IGNI. A string of fire shot towards the pro-hero, burning his hair shield. Mr. Brave, in shock, tried to jump to the side, which was caught by the boy. Vesemir threw a salmon firecracker at the place where Mr. Brave was supposed to be in a moment. Oh sure. That was all the pro-hero managed to say when the firecracker's explosion made him dizzy. His ears were ringing. He couldn't focus his eyes. Vesemir reached him in 3 steps, hit him in the solar plexus with the hilt of his sword. Not only was Mr. Brave dizzy, he also ran out of breath. He dropped his sword, clenched his fist and tried to strike his opponent, but he didn't have time. Another blow with the flat of his sword to the side of his head caused him to fall to the ground in shock. Vesemir put the blade under his throat and looked at Aizawa. He said with narrowed eyes. The winner is Vesemir. The audience's cheer was almost immediate, a mixture of shock, admiration, and anxiety. The boy defeated the pro-hero in 20 seconds. Not only did he defeat him, not only did he do it so quickly, but he didn't even break a sweat. He did it without a scratch. Mr. Brave didn't manage to hit him even once. Aizawa looked at Vesemir carefully. Despite his victory, the boy looked the same as he did at the beginning of the fight. No triumph, no pride. His face was a mask of calm. Maybe only his slightly accelerated breathing gave away that he had fought at all. Mr. Brave lay on the ground, still trying to catch his breath, disoriented, eyes wide with surprise and shame. Humiliated by someone he saw as a murderer. Yui looked at Vesemir with a mixture of relief and admiration. She felt proud, although she didn't know if she should. This wasn't an ordinary win. Vesemir could seriously hurt him, or even kill him. She was probably proud that she had influenced him in some way. But she immediately put on her poker face. Midnight clenched her hands on her peach, watching as Vesemir lowered his sword and took a step back from his fallen opponent. The audience was seething, but all she could hear was her own breathing. Deep, slow, but controlled. It wasn't that Vesemir was brutal. Because he wasn't. It was what he didn't show. No joy, no satisfaction. None of the youthful optimism in his eyes that she saw in even the most serious students when they proved their strength. No. Vesemir was too quiet. Too calm. Too trained. And that was what scared her the most. Hound Dog watched the fight from the hallway by the entrance. He didn't need a full view to know what was happening. He could hear everything: the footsteps, the blows, the breathing. And the sound of Vesemir retreating instead of finishing off his opponent. That was when Hound Dog clenched his teeth. A child shouldn't be able to make decisions like that. A child shouldn't have that kind of awareness at all. He thought. The fur on the back of his neck quivered with anger. Not at Vesemir. At the world this boy came from. Who taught him to fight like that? Who made him practice until his movements became instinct? Who decided a child could be a weapon? Vesemir Kohai. Good luck, she exclaimed enthusiastically as the boy entered the hall. She waved him off energetically, smiling broadly. But he just nodded. No smile. No emotion. His gaze was strangely empty. That first twinge of anxiety. Nejire fell silent, which was strange for her. She walked closer to the railing and leaned over it, watching everything from above. She thought she knew what to expect. She thought Vesemir had simply gone through a hard time. That maybe he was withdrawn because he didn't know the school well yet. But when the fight started, Vesemir moved smoothly, as if every step he took had been planned in advance. As if he had seen Mr. Brave's moves before he made them. And when he fell to his knees and Vesemir could deliver the finishing blow, he stepped back. Like someone who no longer had anything to prove. When the victory was announced, Nejire didn't clap like the rest of the students. She stood still, watching Vesemir take the first step towards the exit. In the privacy of his office, Nizu put down his cup of tea and rewinded the recording. Again. He played the moment Vesemir disappeared from Mr. Brave's field of vision, only to strike his knees a second later. The blow was precise. He could have easily ended the fight there, but he stopped the blade as soon as it cut through his suit and the first layer of skin, drawing BLD. Vesemir hadn't shown his full potential, and he had easily defeated the pro-hero that Mr. Brave was. Aizawa stood still, his arms crossed over his chest, his face as if carved from stone. If someone had looked at him from the side, they would have thought he was just an ordinary, cold teacher observing a sparring match. Typical Aizawa. No emotions. Just analysis. His heart was pounding. This is my son. He couldn't tear himself away from that thought. He watched as Vesemir stood in front of the pro-hero. Alone, without fear. His gaze focused. His movements perfect. And something else. He doesn't fight to win. He fights as if it were part of his nature. When Vesemir put his sword to his opponent's throat and the crowd held its breath, Aizawa looked into his eyes. And he saw in them something that hurt the most. He saw emptiness. There was no triumph in those eyes. There was no pride. He didn't learn to fight for glory. He learned because he had to. Because otherwise he would have died. The winner is Vesemir. As Vesemir took his first step toward the exit, Aizawa fixed his gaze on him. There was still time. Maybe the years could not be caught up. But maybe it would be possible to save what had not yet been broken. Present Mike was leaning against the railing on the balcony, his arms crossed over his chest. Despite being known for commenting on everything, he didn't say a word this time. His eyes were focused, the lines on his forehead betraying his tension. This wasn't just a duel. He could feel it from the moment Vesemir took a step into the arena. When Vesemir used air, maybe telekinesis, he looked at Aizawa standing below. Eraser stood like a rock, but Present Mike knew him all too well. He knew from the clenched jaw and tense shoulders that this wasn't easy for him. He'd only been away from UA for a few days and suddenly he heard talk of a duel. Midnight had told him it was about Aizawa's son. Yes. A son. Present Mike was going to exact his revenge for not being able to become the best uncle in the world, but Nizu had said that Aizawa himself didn't know he had a son. Of course, that didn't change anything. As soon as Aizawa introduces himself to the boy as his father, Present Mike will introduce himself as the cool uncle, and from the looks of it the kid is going to need an uncle like that. Yagi stood in the shadows, his hands hidden in the pockets of his gray sweatshirt. He looked inconspicuous, like an ordinary, emaciated guy. He had come here to see the young Togata, a potential successor to his quirk. His eyes followed every movement in the arena with the precision of someone who had been fighting for his life for decades. When Vesemir deflected the first bullet, then attacked with his quirk and knocked Mr. Brave down, Yagi froze. Telekinesis. A powerful quirk. But then why does he need swords? When Vesemir used his quirk once again, Yagi's eyes opened even wider. Not telekinesis but fire. Is it possible that this boy not only controls air but also fire? What if he also controls earth and water? All four elements. Yagi felt a surge of emotion. Things like this fight, with precise and fully conscious control of attacks, and then using the power of his quirk, didn't happen among children his age. A smile appeared on Yagi's face. It's him. It could be him. My successor. The 9th. Vesemir walked towards the exit. The fight was fast. From the beginning he dictated the terms of the fight. He forced his opponent to make a series of mistakes. The first was that Mr. Brave was too arrogant, and Vesemir, not responding in a way that would satisfy the pro-hero, caused his arrogance to turn into anger. The second mistake was to attack immediately after getting up. Walking away, Vesemir wanted to give the pro-hero a chance, but he did not take the opportunity to assess the situation. Mr. Brave's third mistake was that he once again attacked Vesemir from a distance, where the first time it did not give the expected result. Despite the roar of the audience, he did not react. He did not bow. He did not even look at anyone. If the pro-hero is so weak, then how does that tell others? Are they as weak as Mr. Brave? Is Mrs. Midnight stronger than him, for example? He thought. Without waiting for anyone, he left the hall, walking towards the building he had come from. He remembered the way to his room. Now the most important thing was to take care of his equipment. It didn't matter if the fight lasted 20 seconds or 2 hours. The weapon had to be cleaned. The armor had to be checked for any invisible damage. Only then would he go for a late breakfast. Entering the building that Hound Dog had led him out of earlier, all he heard was the door to the hall he had fought in opening behind him and the sounds of students commenting on his fight. Midnight, Aizawa, Present Mike, and Hound Dog stayed inside to talk. Midnight sent Yui to join Vesemir and take him out for breakfast. Let's start with you, Hound Dog. Can you give us an analysis of what happened here? Midnight asked. Hound Dog looked at the door Vesemir and the students had exited through. Mr. Brave was taken away by robots on a stretcher. There was silence for a moment, broken only by the faint echo of excited conversations of the students coming from outside. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Vesemir was playing with him. That was my first impression. Now I think he was doing what he was trained to do, which personally scares me. Even before the fight, he was in control of the situation. He knew exactly how to use Mr. Brave's arrogance against him. This wasn't a duel. The boy came here to complete a task. That's what it looked like to me. There was silence for a moment. Present Mike said. Did you see the same thing I did? There was no joy of victory. No youthful pride. What did you do to my nephew, Aizawa? Aizawa didn't answer right away. Instead, he slowly turned his head towards his friend. His eyes were tired, as if this was not the first time he had been asked this question. After all, he asked himself this question almost every hour. I had no influence on his upbringing. I didn't even know he existed. Ciri never told me about him. If Nizu hadn't ordered a BLD test and compared the results with the Pro Heroes database, I wouldn't have even known that I have a son. The world he grew up in forced him to be who he is. He doesn't know childhood. He doesn't know safety. Present Mike rubbed his face with his hand, embarrassed. After a moment, however, he was smiling again, and pointed at Aizawa with his finger. I was about to kick your ass for taking away my chance to be an uncle, but Nizu convinced me not to. Still, I demand satisfaction. At least 2 days a week to show him what life is all about. I'll take him to my radio show, to the arcade. He'll love Mortal Kombat. And I'm getting him his first birthday cake. Aizawa narrowed his eyes at him, with the same tired, but slightly softer expression he'd had since the beginning of the conversation. If he's even half as much as me, don't count on him being able to talk you into karaoke. Besides, he can't read our language yet. But he speaks like a native Japanese. Boys, this isn't the right time for such conversations. Let's get back to Vesemir. In my opinion, his blank stare is just for show. After this fight, I can tell he's just analyzing the data. He's using not only his eyes, but also his ears. Did you see how he walked away from Mr. Brave? As if he was ready to continue fighting. Midnight butted in. His body knows no relaxation. As if he lives in a constant state of alarm. Hound Dog stated. So what? The kid pretends to be emotionless because he thinks it's weakness. Present Mike asked, his voice restless. This is how someone who has never stopped fighting lives. Someone who has had only one goal since childhood. To survive. Hound Dog stated once again. How can I help my son? Aizawa asked quietly. Midnight looked at Aizawa. For the first time that day, he looked truly helpless. Not tired. Not cynical. Just human. I don't know yet, but you won't be alone in this. We'll help in any way we can. Vesemir walked down the corridor. He heard soft footsteps behind him that would have escaped the attention of an ordinary person. He also smelled the delicate scent of perfume that a certain person was wearing. He stopped, and without looking back, he said. If you have any questions, you don't have to follow me far away, he said to Yui. Yui stopped abruptly, surprised, although her face didn't betray her astonishment. I didn't get too close because I didn't want to scare you, she said, stepping closer to Vesemir. As soon as she was face to face with him, she continued. Andy told me to take you for breakfast. But also I wanted to talk to you. After the fight. Besides, you know how it looked from our perspective. Our perspective. Please, clarify. The spectators who saw the duel. Everyone thought that Mr. Brave would play with you. They thought that you had no chance. But you were the one who ended the fight without even breaking a sweat. Vesemir was silent for a long moment. He looked at Yui, as if assessing whether her words were a provocation, a compliment or perhaps an attempt to recognize his weak points. However, he shook his head slightly. Miss Yui was not like that. He slowly came out of the trance he had entered before the fight. Finally, he spoke in a calm tone. Because it wasn't a fight. It was a test. For him and for me. And who failed it? Nobody. Yui blinked a few times, trying to understand. Nobody. Mr. Brave got a lesson in humility, about the fact that there is always a bigger fish in the river. On the other hand, I got information about the expectations of the people gathered inside. And what were those expectations? You said it yourself. They expected me to fail because they thought a 14-year-old boy couldn't be better than themselves. If most heroes are at Mr. Brave's level, then I pity them. It only takes one man with the right training to kill the likes of them. Yui shivered slightly, not from the cold, but from the impression Vesemir's words had made. There was no anger, contempt, or boasting in them. There was only a harsh, almost ruthless logic. The boy's words carried a weight she didn't expect from someone her age. Is that what you see when you look at all of us? Weakness? She asked quietly. Vesemir looked her straight in the eyes. His gaze was calm, devoid of emotion, but not indifferent either. During our first meeting, you said you wanted to become a pro heroine. If you reach Mr. Brave's level, you'll be able to handle any bandit you come across. But if you meet someone with my training, not only will you not save people, but you'll also die. Because of so-called quirks, people think they're invincible. Mr. Brave thought so. Look what happened to him. If this fight had taken place a year ago, I would have killed him. Yui paled, but didn't back down. There was no threat in his words, but there was brutal honesty. With his words came the realization of who Vesemir really was. Yui replied after a moment quietly. But you didn't kill him. I'm trying to understand your rules and code of conduct, but if Mr. Brave was a threat to me, a really serious one, then yes. I would kill him. Yui tried not to break eye contact. After a moment, Vesemir began to speak again. If you want to become a pro-heroine, you have to know that the world isn't just divided into the bad guys and the good guys. Sometimes there are no heroes or villains. Only people who stayed alive, because the difference was that if they had chosen the second option, it would have ended with their death. Vesemir turned around. I know how to get to the cafeteria. I'll be there soon for a late breakfast. And after these words, the sound of the young witcher's footsteps rang in Yui's head for a long time. Vesemir entered his room. He put down his swords, took off his armor and put on clean clothes. White shirt, black pants with black shoes. He looked like a typical UA student, or at least that's how he looked until he put both swords back on his back. He wondered if he hadn't been too harsh towards Yui. She didn't know his world. After a moment, he came to the conclusion that he didn't regret his words. Better for her to find out what the world was like now than later, when it would cost her her life. He went to a small desk in the corner of the room. On the table was a kit for maintaining weapons. Wipes, grease, a set of small tools. Vesemir sat down and took care of the steel sword. His movements were calm, precise. It's not too late yet. You don't have to fight anymore. The words of Mr. Hound Dog rang in his head. What did he mean? Fighting is something normal, natural. There will always be those who want to hurt someone for various reasons. This world was no different. He had seen it from his first day, even his first hour in this world. If he couldn't return to his world and similar things were happening in this world, then people might need someone like him, a witcher. Maybe he could even become a pro-hero. Finally he stood up. He sheathed his clean blade in the sheath on his back and walked out of the room towards the cafeteria. Despite the holidays, the cafeteria was bustling with life. Students were having conversations while eating. Some were quiet, others were animated and loud. Some were comparing Vesemir to famous heroes, others were trying to analyze his fighting style. As soon as Vesemir entered the cafeteria, the conversations died down. Almost all the students' gazes turned towards him. He wasn't looking at anyone. His step was calm, composed, as if he didn't notice the attention he was attracting. They recognized him by his two swords. They didn't know yet that one was for monsters and the other for humans. Vesemir Kohai. Nejire called out, with a smile full of genuine interest, as if she had just seen him in the hallway, and not playing out one of the most crushing duels in the history of the school. She joined him in the line for food. A few of my friends will be sitting with us today. You'll meet new people. Vesemir looked at Nejire out of the corner of his eye. At first he wanted to refuse, but her smile was wide, radiant, inspiring hope, so he could only nod. Okay. I'll meet your friends. As soon as they took their food, Nejire pulled him towards a table where a few people were sitting. These are my friends. This is Tamaki, and this is Mirio. Guys, meet Vesemir. Tamaki nodded, looked down and munched on his toast without saying a word. Mirio, on the other hand, spoke with his typical enthusiasm. I saw how you defeated Mr. Brave without much effort. Good job, but don't you think a little more restraint would be useful? He wanted a duel, so he got it. He underestimated me and lost. Mirio, despite his cheerful tone, listened attentively. He smiled the whole time. Ouch. I hope you'll treat me kindly when it comes to training together. Speaking of training, I'd love to practice with you if the opportunity arises. As of today, I'm neither accepting nor rejecting your offer, Mr. Mirio. I think that whether or not I should be allowed to practice is up to Mr. Aizawa, Ms. Midnight, or Mr. Principal Nizu. I wouldn't want to go against their recommendations. Nejire said to Vesemir. I told you guys that Vesemir is super mysterious. They ate their meal for a while. When asked where you were from and what you're doing here, Vesemir would say something like, I'm sorry, but I can't say anything about that right now without permission from one of the teachers. That closed any further similar questions. At one point, Mirio's phone vibrated, informing him of a new message. Mirio looked at the screen, then turned the phone so everyone could see what was happening on the screen. Look. It's that villain again, who looks like a ghost with a sword and a lantern. This is the third week that the heroes have been trying to deal with him. He appears at night and disappears before morning. Always in the same place. He attacks anyone he encounters. Vesemir leaned down to look at the creature on the screen of the so-called phone. He froze. So there are monsters in this world too, but judging by Mirio's reaction they don't know what they are. He thought he was a human who probably has the quirk of turning into a ghost. That's not a human. That's a wraith. A monster. Tamaki looked up from his plate, eyebrows slightly raised, as if he wasn't sure if he heard correctly. Wraith? Is that the name of that villain? Do you know him? Oh. Is that who you're hiding from? Nejire asked immediately. No. It's a monster. I've seen wraiths before. They're creatures born of pain, anger, often death. They hate the living. They don't attack because they want to gain something. But because their existence is suffering. They can't be resocialized or captured. They have to be killed before they kill innocent people. Tamaki looked in disbelief, stopping eating. Mirio frowned, and Nejire, despite her usually cheerful nature, suddenly became serious. Finally, Mirio spoke up. Wait, are you sure it's not someone with a quirk? Vesemir nodded. He stood up and looked around. He saw Lady Midnight. Mr. Mirio. Please show Lady Midnight the same thing. I need to talk to her. Mirio didn't protest. He did as Vesemir asked. After a brief explanation of what a wraith was, Vesemir said. Miss Midnight. I need to talk to Director Nizu as soon as possible. I need to prepare. What do you want to prepare for, Vesemir? Miss Midnight. From what I understand, Wraith has been wandering around this bridge for 3 weeks now. Pro heroes won't be able to kill him. I've killed a few like that before. That's my trade. Midnight nodded displeased and took Vesemir straight to Nizu. She hoped that the mouse wasn't going to send Vesemir to fight a monster. Nizu's office. Nizu played a recording of the figure Vesemir had named Wraith. After watching the recording, he turned to the boy. So he's not a man with a quirk. He used to be. Aizawa and Midnight exchanged glances of uncertainty. Finally, Aizawa asked. What do you mean he used to be? Let me explain this as simply as possible, so as not to get into a several-hour conversation about monsters. A wraith is a monster classified as a specter. It is not known exactly how they are created. The most popular opinion is that when a person dies full of anger, for example because of an injustice they believe they have done to them, then their soul changes into a wraith. This is an enemy that hates all living things. There is no known way to reverse the transformation. The only way is to kill the monster and bury the body. A wraith can appear in a cemetery, but also in a place known to the deceased person from whom it was created. It can also be in the vicinity of the person's death, so the body is probably somewhere nearby. A wraith can be created at any time, so the body can be 3 weeks old, exactly the same age as the pro-heroes try to fight the wraith, or it can be several months old. Some people are able to call a wraith to life using an appropriate ritual. Nizu sat in his armchair sipping tea. He didn't like the fact that monsters from Vesemir's world appeared in Japan. Maybe they are even all over the world. Fortunately Vesemir has the right knowledge, or at least that's what it looked like. Aizawa looked at the screen in silence for a moment, where a frame showing a blurred, ethereal silhouette of Wraith had stopped. Is this what his son was fighting? Is this the reason, or at least one of the reasons, why he is so well trained? Midnight, on the other hand, looked at Vesemir. There was something calm about him. As if he knew what was about to happen. Before she could say anything, Vesemir said. I have to prepare myself. Midnight's eyes widened. Despite understanding what Vesemir had said, she still asked the question. For what, Vesemir? For the fight. He answered shortly, not looking at Midnight. Instead, he watched the paused recording of an unknown pro-hero trying to burn a wraith unsuccessfully. He turned to the director. Mr. Nizu. I need supplies immediately to create the right equipment for the fight. This opponent is completely resistant to fire and physical attacks. Nizu nodded slowly. What do you need, young Vesemir? Aizawa raised his voice. No. He's too young to fight something like that. I'm not. I've already killed several wraiths. For you, it's a huge danger. For me, it's just another Monday at work. There was silence. Aizawa clenched his fists. Midnight instinctively put a hand on his shoulder, trying to calm him down, but even she felt an inner protest at what they had just heard. Vesemir, on the other hand, stood calmly, as if his words were not an exaggeration, but merely a statement of fact. There was not an ounce of pride in his tone, let alone arrogance. It sounded like a cold account of everyday life that was madness to them. Nizu finally broke the silence, placing his cup on the saucer with a soft clatter of porcelain. All right. Let's make a list of what you need. You'll also get access to the workshop, and power loader support. Give me specific requirements and I'll do my best to get it ready for you. Before Midnight or Aizawa could interject, Vesemir began reciting the ingredients. A regular lubricant. Doesn't matter what kind. Herbs, verbena, mistletoe, ranigrin, saltpeter or any explosive powder, fine silver filings. Begotik blossoms, celandine, strong vodka or spirit. And I need the ability to set up my own herbal workshop and I need a place to brew alcohol and potions. Alcohol. Midnight almost exclaimed. Aizawa narrowed his eyes and made a displeased face. Vesemir didn't move a millimeter. Spirit or vodka are not for drinking. They are the base for alchemical potions. They dissolve the ingredients and activate their properties. Personally, I prefer mead. Aizawa flinched. His 14-year-old son drinks alcohol. Nizu only nodded after a moment. Power Loader will prepare a workshop for you. We will equip your workstation according to your requirements. However, I require that you work under the supervision of any UA teacher. Vesemir only nodded. 2 hours later the station for preparing potions and other necessary tools for Vesemir was ready. Nizu had provided everything that was needed. The station had herbal equipment, where you could mix, heat, distill and many other activities. Aizawa couldn't watch his son work with alcohol, but he watched everything with Nizu in his office. Midnight sat restlessly on a chair in the study, watching Vesemir. She watched as the boy skillfully prepared 3 burners that heated transparent alcohol. He threw some herbs into each of them. The burners were set to different strengths. After a few minutes, the alcohol changed colors to pink, green and blue. Vesemir. Can you tell me what you did now? Without taking his eyes off cleaning empty potion bottles, he answered. Pink is vitriol, blue is ether, and the green one is selim. These are substances needed to create a potion called swallow. Using the right temperature and the right herbs, I can extract the selected substances. Some herbs have several different substances, but I can extract them separately. Vesemir cleaned each of the ingredients of the herb residue and poured everything into a larger glass container and boiled until the ingredients mixed. What does this potion do? It allows you to regenerate injuries. And how? Do you pour it on a wound? Vesemir poured the finished potion into 4 small bottles with cork stoppers. He put them aside to cool them down. He hesitated to answer her question. He didn't want to inform her that elixirs should be drunk. He remembered the last conversation about alcohol in the restaurant. In Mr. Nizu's office, he stupidly admitted to liking mead. Please do not use them in any way. For normal people, witcher elixirs are poisonous. I am adapted to consume them, because I can digest them. Midnight was not stupid. She could see that he was hiding something. The name, elixir, itself indicates that it is rather for drinking, but she did not say anything more. She did not know anything about his world. Maybe you really pour this potion on a wound. In a similar way, Vesemir prepared another potion, Petrie's filter. This time he used 4 burners. Midnight saw how one of the substances turned silver. Finally, Vesemir started to create spectre oil and moon dust. Midnight watched this with interest. Power Loader entered the room, curious about the young witcher's creations. "And how is it going?" he said to Midnight, but it was Vesemir who answered. "I'm done. Now we have to wait." Nizu and Aizawa watched what Vesemir was doing. "Aizawa. Don't you think it's time to tell him that you're his father? I've already prepared all the documents. From today on, Vesemir is officially a Japanese citizen, known as Aizawa Vesemir." Aizawa nodded. "Yes, but not before the fight. I don't want to distract him, but I have to be there. After all, Vesemir needs permission from the pro hero to use his quirk. I'm ready to take responsibility." Nizu looked at Aizawa with concern and understanding, carefully choosing his words. "I understand your decision, Aizawa. It's reasonable. If you distract him with emotions now, he might make a mistake, but I can't help but ask. Are you ready for this? Not only for the fight but for what comes after." Aizawa leaned heavily against the back of the chair, tired more than usual. "I don't know. I didn't even have a chance to raise him. He doesn't know me. Maybe he doesn't want to know. What if I'm a bad father? He's been through things I can't even wrap my mind around." "You're scared?" Nizu stated. "Yes." Nizu took a sip of tea. He looked at Aizawa with understanding. "Aizawa, I know you'll be a great father. You're not alone. Vesemir may not be a typical teenager, he's been through a lot, he had to kill to survive. You saw the picture he painted yourself. Think about how many more pictures he has ready to paint. The boy needs help. And that's why you're sending him to fight a villain, a monster." Aizawa threw out a slightly accusatory tone. "No. I'm doing this for several reasons. The first reason, he knew what it was. The second reason, he knows how to fight it and how to prepare." As Nizu said these words, he looked back at the screen where Vesemir was creating potions. "And the third reason, I'm sending him so that the boy here doesn't break down mentally." Aizawa looked up. "What do you mean broke down mentally?" "He's been trained since he was a child to fight monsters like the one under the bridge. It's probably the only thing he knows. You can't expect him to act like a teenager from our world, because he's not. Fighting monsters is something natural to him, normal. We'll try to change that, but we can't force him to stop fighting monsters, because it could hurt him. I'm sure he's lived in constant danger for most of his life. You've heard his real name and titles. He's a highborn noble, if not from a ruling family. What do you think? What could have forced him to live like this?" Aizawa thought for a moment, what could Ciri have done that would have put Vesemir in danger? If Ciri is really someone important, there may be even a queen or maybe an empress, then Vesemir could be a great bargaining chip, and if Ciri wasn't able to keep him safe, then that means there's a civil war in his home, or an invasion by an exceptionally strong enemy that's been going on for years. Nizu nodded. "So here we have a young prince from another dimension, from a medieval world full of monsters and magic, who was raised to be a warrior who is being hunted for being born into a royal family. Aizawa, he can't be normal in our sense of the word. When was he supposed to be normal? When was he fighting for his life in a river soaked in blood, or fighting monsters like the one under the bridge?" Aizawa lowered his head and clenched his fists. "This is my son. Yes. This is your son. And a warrior with extraordinary power from another world. We will help him become a pro-hero. At the age of 16, we will enroll him in UA, but for now he has to fight monsters, because that's what he's used to and trained for. This is the only reality he knows. I have to prepare documents for him to become your sidekick. Isn't he too young? He didn't finish school. According to the law, there is no minimum age limit for becoming a sidekick of a pro hero. Vesemir will be the youngest person to have a pro hero license. Of course, it won't be a full license, only a provisional one, but it will allow him to act in dangerous situations. It will also allow him to wear his equipment in public. He will receive a full license only after he finishes his studies at UA if he wants to become a hero. Aizawa was still looking at the screen, although his thoughts were far from the scene he was observing. The image of his son, who with cold precision created potions from unknown substances, was both fascinating and painful. The boy should not know such things. He should not know the taste of spirits or the names of herbs or the strange ingredients he extracted from them. Vesemir finished his work. Time to rest and meditate. He asked Lady Midnight to take him to a place where he could sit and meditate in peace. Preferably somewhere surrounded by nature. Midnight led him to a park located on the grounds of UA. Lots of trees, of all kinds. Flowers, of every known color. No modern sounds. Paths paved with stones and plenty of benches for resting. Thank you very much, Lady Midnight. Can I be alone now? I remember the way back. Despite her hesitation, Midnight nodded. All right Vesemir, I'll be nearby if you need me. The boy only bowed gently, like a knight dismissed by a courtier. He walked calmly down the path. Singing birds chirped songs known only to them. The rustle of the trees was the same everywhere. Whether here or at home the rustle of trees always calmed Vesemir. Vesemir, Vesemir, Vesemir. He heard his name, called by a woman he didn't know. He couldn't see her, but he could hear her gentle voice. The voice soothed his nerves as if it allowed for a moment of oblivion. He turned towards the voice that came from the depths of the park far from the path. Vesemir, Vesemir, Vesemir. The voice rang out again. Without looking back, Vesemir set off to meet the owner of the voice. He walked calmly between the trees, which looked like those around Toussaint. Vesemir, Vesemir, Vesemir. Vesemir came across a small lake, more like a pond, 30 maybe 40 paces wide. It was surrounded on 3 sides by rocks, and 5 stone boulders protruded from the water, with inscriptions in his language. The first boulder, no man can be called good who does not share his prosperity with others. Generosity is required for dignity in life and peace in death. The second boulder, valor does not make one good, yet how many good men have you met in your life's journey who were cowards? Those who possess valor do not hesitate to stand against the majority, no matter what the consequences. Third boulder, there are many traits that bear witness to a man's true nature. Compassion is what separates men from beasts. Whoever feels sympathy for his fellow man will never turn a blind eye to misfortune. He will always stand in defense of the wronged. Fourth boulder, honor cannot be purchased. Honor also cannot be sold, for its value is greater than all the treasure in the world. Yet one can lose it, and whoever does so shall have sullied his name for all eternity. A truly honorable man always stands behind his actions, faces every challenge and refuses to lie. The fifth boulder, wisdom is a virtue which one should strive to cultivate throughout one's life, for it is impossible to be so wise one cannot become even wiser. The wise know this. As we journey through life, we should seek to make wise choices. Remember, wise choices are not those which make our lives easier or simpler. Often, they make them more complicated. But always, they make us better. A woman's voice came from the lake. You have already proven your honor, fighting in the tournament in Toussaint. Your victory has been entered into the books as the youngest competitor in the tournament. The boulder glowed with a soft blue light. Vesemir knelt on one knee, listening to the voice. You have already proven your valor, going into battle with your friends, fighting shoulder to shoulder with ordinary soldiers, despite Geralt's prohibition. The boulder glowed with a red light. The boy bowed his head, listening further as the voice described his knightly virtues. Compassion is something you are not very familiar with. There is a lot of anger in you, which you turned into revenge when you could not bear the events in Novigrad. That day you forgot how to be kind in truth, and not out of compulsion or etiquette. There is still hope for you. The boulder remained unlit. Vesemir closed his eyes. The judgment of his soul was correct, which did not mean he was pleased with it. Generosity is a trait that has followed you for a long time, although no one has offered it to you for years. You have repeatedly refused to pay for the monsters you killed. The villagers of Kover and Povis remember this to this day. Although you were wealthy at that time, and your needs were satisfied by others, you still did not take advantage of the situation of people in need to enrich yourself. The boulder glowed with a golden light. Vesemir only shook his head. Witchers took money for their services, but Triss and Geralt provided him with a decent living. So he did not want to take payment from people who were worse off than him. It was simply natural. Wisdom is something you can't boast about. When you tried to be calm, you got angry. When you could talk, you grabbed your sword. Instead of resting, you continued to chase your opponent, losing his trail and causing the death of your horse. You are still young, and you have much to learn. This world is different from ours, and I hope you will pass the tests that many will put you through. The boulder did not light up. Vesemir approached the lake, took an uncertain step and stood on the water. Another step. 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 Finally, he stood in the middle of the lake, between 5 boulders. Directly below it, under the water's surface, lay the sword. Erendite. He was not worthy yet. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Pidzejowaty on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.